Have you ever been the one everyone turns to when they hurt, only to find yourself utterly alone when your own heart breaks? You've canceled your plans to soothe a friend's anxiety, stayed up all night to hold their hand through tears, and offered refuge when life's storms raged. You became a sanctuary, a place of safety and understanding. Then came the day you needed that same sanctuary. You reached out, voice trembling, asking simply, "Will you be there for me?" But no one showed up. No one asked if you were okay. Your messages went unread. Your calls went unanswered. And in that moment, you felt like a ghost in the world you once held together. If this scenario feels all too familiar, you're not alone. You belong to a covert community of empaths, people whose extraordinary compassion can also become their most crushing vulnerability. Here's the unsettling paradox. The very trait that makes you invaluable to others, your boundless empathy, can also turn into an emotional trap. You give until your well runs dry, and then there's no one to refill it. In this video, we'll explore Carl Jung's profound insight that our greatest gifts can mask our deepest wounds. Jung called these hidden aspects of the psyche the shadow self, the parts of us we push into darkness because they feel unacceptable or dangerous. For empaths, the shadow often houses unspoken anger, exhaustion, and an unacknowledged need for boundaries, feelings they've learned to suppress in order to care for others. We'll uncover how chronic giving depletes an empath's finite reservoir of psychic energy, leaving them emotionally hollow and unseen. We'll see why society praises their selflessness even as it feeds on their depletion. And we'll investigate the moment the empath's suppressed shadow finally erupts, when years of unreciprocated care ignite a powerful, often frightening, call to reclaim the self. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why the empath's generosity often leads to invisibility, how offering too much without reciprocity makes you expected and ultimately ignored, what Carl Jung meant by the shadow self, why integrating your hidden emotions is essential for true wholeness, how reclaiming your psychic energy transforms a wound into a source of strength, practical steps to balance compassion with self-care. Ask yourself now, have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Have you wondered why the more you give, the less you seem to matter? You're about to discover that this isn't your failing, it's a design of your psyche. And once you learn to bring your shadow into the light, you'll transform your deepest pain into the foundation of your most authentic life. Why the empath's deepest wound feels like a gift. Carl Jung's shadow, let's begin. Before we can understand why the empath's deepest wound feels like a gift, we must first explore the core theory that underpins this paradox, Carl Jung's concept of psychic energy. Jung proposed that every individual possesses a finite reservoir of psychic energy, a living force that animates our thoughts, our emotions, and our sense of self. Think of it as the battery that powers your inner world. This energy fuels emotional resilience, your capacity to feel joy, sorrow, love, and anger. Creative expression, the flair that births art, ideas, and innovation. Self-identity, the cohesion of you as a distinct, coherent being. When you expend psychic energy in one domain, it leaves fewer resources for the rest. Most people unconsciously regulate their energy through boundaries, saying no, distancing from draining relationships, or limiting how much emotional labor they undertake. Empaths, by contrast, operate under a different rulebook. Their innate sensitivity to others' moods means they automatically engage in emotional exchanges that deplete their own reserves. Without borders, they become conduits through which everyone else's feelings flow, often without reciprocation. A psychic energy exchange. In every interaction, an exchange of psychic energy occurs. Imagine a simple conversation. Speaker A vents frustration about a bad day. Empath B absorbs that frustration, offering sympathy and reassurance. This interaction transfers energy from the empath to the speaker. Over time, repeated one-way transactions exhaust the empath's inner battery, leaving them emotionally drained. B. The persona and the shadow. Jung identified two fundamental components of the psyche. The persona, the social mask we present to the world, the attributes we cultivate to be accepted. The shadow, the repressed, hidden parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable. Our anger, envy, self-interest, and yes, our deep-seated needs for rest and self-preservation. For empaths, the persona often manifests as the giver, relentlessly kind, reassuring, and available. But beneath that mask lies the shadow self, where suppressed resentment, exhaustion, and the longing for self-care quietly accumulate. C. Individuation. Integration of light and dark. Individuation is Jung's term for the process of becoming whole by integrating both persona and shadow. It involves self-reflection, acknowledging the hidden parts of your psyche, boundary setting, learning to say no without guilt, energy allocation, consciously managing your psychic resources. Without individuation, an empath remains trapped in a cycle of giving and depletion, mistaking their wound for a virtue. Example 1. Workplace overload scene. A bustling open-plan office. The empath, let's call her Maya, becomes an unpaid therapist to colleagues. Monday morning, a co-worker storms in after a rough weekend. Maya steps away from her project to listen. Midweek, another colleague unloads personal drama during lunch. Maya postpones her own break. Friday, Maya realizes she's fallen behind on deadlines and feels resentful, yet unable to refuse. Outcome: Maya's psychic battery plummets. By week's end, she's irritable, unfocused, and anxious, yet everyone praises her as so compassionate. They don't see her burnout because she never asks for help. Example 2. Family dynamic scene. A small apartment living room. Empath Ravi tends to an elderly parent with health issues. Ravi cancels social plans to drive mom to doctor's appointments. He manages her medications, cooks meals, and fields her anxieties. When Ravi's own health falters, he hesitates to complain. Guilt tells him his needs are trivial compared to hers. Outcome: Ravi's immune system weakens. He ignores his own warning signs until forced to rest, which feels like admitting failure. The family praises his sacrifice, but neglects his well-being. Nietzsche on the mirror effect. Friedrich Nietzsche warned against becoming a mirror for others' expectations. When you reflect only what others want to see, you lose sight of your own image. Empaths become these living mirrors, absorbing external emotions while their self-image fades. Nietzsche wrote, "He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." In other words, the empath may silently resent their invisibility, but continues the pattern because self-abandonment feels safer than self-assertion. B. Kierkegaard's aesthetic despair. Soren Kierkegaard described the aesthetic life as one lived for pleasure or approval. Empaths, in seeking approval through self-sacrifice, trap themselves in aesthetic despair, a cycle of short-lived gratifications, praise for kindness, followed by emptiness. True fulfillment demands breaking free from approval seeking to an ethical life guided by authentic self-choices. C. Jung Shadow integration. Jung urged us to make the unconscious conscious. For empaths, this means acknowledging anger at overuse, feeling justified in resenting those who tap their energy, need for rest, granting permission to withdraw without guilt, right to self-care, valuing their own well-being as much as others. Integration occurs when these shadow impulses are recognized, honored, and balanced with empathic compassion. Modern studies validate Jung's early insights. Emotional labor research. Psychologists show that high emotional empathy correlates with greater risk of burnout, depression, and anxiety. When individuals lack assertive boundary setting, their mental health suffers dramatically. Neuroscience of empathy. Brain imaging reveals that empaths exhibit heightened activity in mirror neuron systems, making them more susceptible to absorbing others' emotional states as if they were their own. Boundary setting interventions. Clinical trials demonstrate that training empaths in assertiveness and self-care strategies leads to significant improvement in well-being, decreased anxiety, and restored energy levels. These findings underscore the necessity of balancing empathic gifts with protective boundaries. So far, we've seen psychic energy is finite. Empaths risk depletion by overgiving. Persona and shadow explain how the empath's gift masks deeper needs for self-preservation. Individuation offers a path to wholeness by integrating light and dark. Real-life examples highlight the tangible costs of unbalanced empathy. Philosophical reflections remind us that self-sacrifice without self-assertion leads to despair. Scientific evidence confirms that empathic overinvolvement harms mental health. This deep dive lays the groundwork for our next stage, revealing unsettling truths about how empathic depletion is not only self-inflicted, but socially reinforced. Because once you understand these dynamics, you'll recognize why your wound feels like a gift, and why you must embrace your shadow to heal it. Next, we'll build tension by exposing the uncomfortable reality that the world benefits from your depletion, and that breaking free will challenge everything you've been taught about kindness. Have you ever wondered why? The more you give, the less you seem to exist. When you make yourself perpetually available, you become expected, like air. No one notices until you vanish. Carl Jung warned that an over-identified persona blinds us to our own presence. In the empath's case, the giver mask becomes so convincing that even you begin to believe that you're nothing more than a conduit for other people's emotions. Scene: you answer a frantic late-night call from a friend in crisis. You drive through rain-slick streets to their door. You comfort them until dawn. The next morning, you crawl back into your own life, hoping for a moment of kindness in return, and find only silence. This pattern repeats until your own needs are erased from your awareness. You stop dreaming in color because your inner world has been drained of pigment. You stop asking for help because your shadow desire for support feels shameful. It feels counterintuitive. Shouldn't compassion bring connection? Yet studies show that high empathic concern without clear boundaries leads to emotional exhaustion. Dr. Judith Orloff's research on empathic personalities found that chronic caretakers report more anxiety, depression, and even physical symptoms like headaches and gastrointestinal distress. Imagine your psychic energy as a coin. Every act of emotional labor spends a coin. Without replenishment, your purse goes empty. Yet you continue to spend because you've been taught that generosity is priceless, and that to ask for your coin back is to be selfish. What if your niceness is a silent assault on your own psyche? When you agree to every demand, you're saying yes to others and no to yourself. This internal betrayal breeds resentment that simmers beneath the surface like a subterranean river ready to flood. Scene: at a family gathering, you smile politely as relatives unload criticism. You nod in comfort, swallowing your own hurt. Later, you wake at 3 a.m. drenched in tears, asking, why did I let them speak to me that way? Here's the unsettling truth. Your perpetual kindness can train others to violate your boundaries. According to research in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, people who consistently defer their own needs are more likely to experience social neglect. Not because others are cruel, but because they simply don't recognize where your boundaries lie. We idolize the empath as one who feels deeply. Yet what if too much emotional sensitivity becomes a prison? When you absorb every nuance of every person's mood, decisions become agonizing. Do you comfort your friend or protect your own energy? Do you lend an ear or preserve your sanity? Each scenario triggers a moral calculus. If I refuse, will I hurt them? If I agree, will I harm myself? This endless oscillation leads to decision fatigue, the same phenomenon Barry Schwartz identified in choice overload, but now applied to your emotional life. You become paralyzed, unable to choose either self-care or service, and so you choose both and end up choosing neither. Perhaps the most disturbing revelation: your burnout doesn't just harm you, it benefits others. When you're emptied, you're compliant. You won't demand recognition. You won't enforce boundaries. You become a reliable source of free emotional labor. Scene, you volunteer for yet another committee at work, manage everyone's conflict, and soothe client anxieties. Then stay late to finish your own tasks. Your boss praises your dedication. You feel a brief glow of validation until you remember that glow costs you your evenings, your weekends, your spark. Studies of workplace emotional labor show that employers unconsciously exploit employees who excel at interpersonal care, assigning them extra roles without compensation or acknowledgement. The empath becomes the company's emotional unpaid intern. Jung theorized that what we repress returns with greater force. For empaths, the hidden anger and exhaustion in the shadow self eventually erupt. This can look like sudden rage at small slights, emotional numbness where you shut down completely, self-sabotage, such as quitting a job impulsively or severing relationships in a moment of fury. After months of accommodating every request, you snap during a routine favor. You yell a loved one, words you've never spoken before. The room goes silent. You realize you've been carrying a tempest in your chest, and one small spark was all it took. Research on repressed emotion indicates that suppressed resentment increases the likelihood of explosive outbursts rather than measured assertiveness. It's as if your psyche demanded payment, and you could offer nothing but a sudden, painful withdrawal. Here's a paradox few acknowledge. Neglecting your own needs can feel comfortable because it's familiar. The empath often returns to the same pattern, even when it hurts, because self-abandonment has become home. Dopamine studies reveal that acts of self-sacrifice can momentarily raise mood through praise and validation, creating a neurochemical loop. You become addicted to the fleeting high of good deed praise, even though the net effect drains your well. Scene, you volunteer at every charity event, spearhead every project, and wear burnout like a badge. Friends extol your generosity. You pulse with pride until the burnout resurfaces and you wonder why you keep returning to a cycle that hurts you. Neuroscientists have pinpointed the mirror neuron system as the basis for empathy. Our brains literally mirror others' emotions. For empaths, this system is hyperactive, making you experience others' joy as your own, but also their pain as if it were yours. When this system goes unchecked, it overloads the prefrontal cortex, diminishing your capacity for self-regulation and decision-making. Over time, chronic hyperempathy rewires your brain toward reactivity rather than responsivity, leaving you perpetually on edge. Unconsciously, you agreed to a tacit social contract. I will care for your heart if you never ask about mine. This contract keeps you trapped. But once you see it, you can negotiate new terms, naming the contract, acknowledge the unspoken agreement, refusing the fine print, decide which clauses to void, like always say yes, drafting a new agreement, commit to reciprocal care, self-advocacy, and boundary setting. As we've peeled back these layers, revealing how your gifts have masked wounds and how society rewards your depletion, you might feel a rising tension in your chest. That tension is your shadow calling you home. Soon, in our climax section, you will confront the big revelation that the empath's wound was never a curse to be endured, but a signal to be honored. You'll learn how to transform your suffering into a gateway for authentic strength. Brace yourself, because the truth you're about to face will change everything. At the heart of every empath's journey lies a paradox so profound it can upend your entire worldview. The more you give of yourself, the less you are seen. For decades, you believed that boundless compassion and endless availability would draw people closer. You've sacrificed your rest, your dreams, your very identity in service of others, only to discover that your kindness became the very cloak that hid you. Here is the big revelation. Your self-sacrifice was never admired for its nobility. It was exploited as a resource. What felt like love and acceptance was, in truth, a one-way drain on your psychic energy. Imagine a well, once deep and clear, now reduced to a trickle because every precious drop was poured out without replenishment. In this moment of clarity, you must confront an unsettling truth. Your greatest gift, your empathy, has been weaponized against your own wholeness. This realization shocks because it flies in the face of every societal mantra you've been taught. Be kind, be available, put others first. Yet, as Jung taught, when the persona of the giver becomes your entire identity, it extinguishes your authentic self. The shadow, the anger, the exhaustion, the need for self-care erupts, demanding to be acknowledged. Philosophically, this turning point echoes Jung's statement. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your darkness is not shameful. It is your compass. It points to where your boundaries must be drawn. What if, by refusing to be endlessly available, you open the door to your true power? This is the core idea that will challenge everything you thought you knew about kindness. True compassion begins with self-compassion. Only when you guard your own energy can you give wholeheartedly, without depletion, without resentment. In this moment, society's norms fracture. You see that the culture of nonstop self-sacrifice serves institutional and relational interests, not your well-being. You recognize that true freedom for an empath lies not in giving until it hurts, but in choosing when, how, and whom to give. By reclaiming your psychic energy, you transform from a mere emotional conduit into a sovereign being, one whose kindness flows from abundance, not emptiness. This is the premiere of a new chapter, where self-care is the radical act, and boundaries become the foundation of genuine connection. As you step away from the brink of burnout, you'll discover that the wound you once bore in silent suffering was a gift, a signal guiding you toward wholeness. It's here, in the crucible of your shadow, that your deepest strength is forged. Now, with this revelation glowing at your core, you stand poised to reshape your life. The next and final section will show you exactly how to ride this turning point into lasting healing, balance, and authentic power. You've seen the unseen architecture of your own psyche, how your empathic gift masked a deeper wound, how chronic giving depleted your psychic energy, and how the shadow's call to reclaim yourself was always waiting in the wings. Now comes the essential work, transforming insight into action. 1. Set sacred boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're guardrails that protect your inner world. Start small. The 10-minute rule. When asked for emotional labor, listening, advising, consoling, give yourself permission to limit the initial engagement to 10 minutes. After that, gently bow out with a promise to follow up later if you wish. The no and less framework. Replace instinctive yes with I'll help, unless, and fill in the blank with a genuine need. I'll help unless it conflicts with my self-care routine, or I'll help unless I have an appointment with myself. Every time you practice saying no, you reclaim a drop of psychic energy. Over weeks, those drops fill your well again. 2. Replenish your psychic reserve. Empaths must become their own primary caregivers. Create daily rituals that nourish you. Energy audit. Each evening, note one interaction that drained you and one that energized you. Commit to reducing the first and amplifying the second. Solitude sessions. Schedule short periods, 5 or 10 minutes, of uninterrupted solitude. Sit in silence, meditate, or simply breathe. This quiet recalibrates your nervous system and recharges your reserves. Creative expression. Channel surplus emotion into art, writing, or movement. When you externalize feelings safely, you prevent them from festering in your shadow. 3. Practice active individuation. Individuation means embracing both your caring persona and your hidden shadow impulses. Shadow dialogue. Write a letter from your shadow self. Let it speak freely, its anger, its needs, its grief. Then respond as your wiser self, offering compassion and solutions. Boundary rehearsal. Role-play difficult conversations in front of a mirror or with a trusted friend. Practice asserting needs calmly and firmly. Value clarification. List your top 5 values. e.g., autonomy, creativity, authenticity, connection, health. Use this list to guide decisions, ensuring your choices align with your deeper self. 4. Philosophical reflection. Toward authentic living. Carl Jung believed that true fulfillment arises when we harmonize our inner opposites. By integrating your shadow, you no longer sacrifice your energy for the illusion of self-worth. Instead, you live from a place of abundance. In this space, compassion transforms from a one-way drain into a balanced exchange, from a performance for external approval into a genuine gift you choose to give. Authentic living means your kindness flows not because you have nothing left to lose, but because you have plenty to share. 5. The ripple effect of self-care. Your commitment to your own well-being reverberates outward. Healthier relationships. When you give from fullness rather than emptiness, others respect your boundaries and engage more authentically. Creative flourishing. Reclaimed energy awakens your passions. You'll find yourself drawn to projects you abandoned or new pursuits that reflect your true interests. Resilience in crisis. With a robust psychic reserve, you can support others without sacrificing yourself, transforming caregiving from a burden into a sustainable act of love. Now it's your turn. Reflect and share. Have you ever felt invisible despite always being there for others? What boundary will you set today to honor your own needs? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else to reclaim their gift from their wound. If this video resonated with you, subscribe, and share it with the empaths in your life who deserve to see their value and their strength clearly for the first time.